thank you all for coming. Great to have you here, and mostly great to have you here, RZA. Real honor, that you're joining us to talk a little about music, because we've been on a journey to think about how to make music more accessible and more expressive, and just kind of to expand the sound palettes and the possibilities. And that's something you've been doing your whole career. So it's great to have you here to kind of talk about that.
Well, thanks for inviting me down. There's no place like CES, and all our technology people in the building. Music is a big part of your life, and ROLI has figured out a way to put that into your life in a very, very smooth, easy way, yo.
So just, I'd be curious to kind of go back to the beginning, like for you, making music. Where did it all get started? Like, what was the first time that you wanted to make music? What was the first piece of gear that you used to create with?
Well, I grew up in New York City, which is considered the birthplace of hip hop. And the first piece of music gear I had was actually a turntable. And I would sell newspapers to hustle up some money to get 2 turntables and a mixer. And it was a real task of just spinning the record back and forth for the parts you wanted to rap on. That led on to discovering an echo machine and then a drum machine. Once I seen the drum machine and I was able to program my own beats, I became kind of addicted to this form of creativity. And living in New York City and all the gritty sounds of the subway, the Staten Island ferry, all those different things just kind of traveled with me. And when the sampler came out, that changed my life.
Totally. So when you think about making music and you think about kind of like the sounds out in the world or the sounds in your life and then the sounds in a track, like how do you make those connections?
Well, the cool thing about music is that, in my opinion, everything has a musical connotation. Whether it's the flapping wings of a butterfly, whether it's the running sound of water, whether it's the crackling of a fire, even the noise of a subway train passing over at 4 a.m. because you live right next to that building, it all has a musical connotation. So when the sampler came out for me, I made it my business to sample those kind of sounds. And I'm gonna take y'all back a little bit. They had this thing, you have your phone could do it now, but before we had to get a portable DAT player with a plug-in mic, you know what I mean? You walk around and just record sounds of the city, and you take those sounds and you put them into your music. So that was, that's how I see it. I see music as being, any noise can be manipulated to music. I'm a big Kung Fu movie fan. So I would pull sounds from Kung Fu movies. Yeah, and to me, it's music in that, you know what I mean? And so I think if once you are aware of the beauty of music, I think you can find it almost anywhere.
And so as you have developed your own sort of production sound, as you've gone through these different sort of stages, how has the game changed for you? How has your approach to creativity and creation changed from when you were out with like a DAC and a mic to through the years?
Well, the funny thing, I mean, like I said, I guess I'm a dinosaur when it comes to this world, right, of making music. I'll just say, imagine if I wanted to do a party, right? I'll have to bring 2 turntables and a mixer. I gotta hire a kid to carry my crates of records. Another kid gotta bring my speakers, you know what I mean? And hopefully we got a microphone. Sometimes we wouldn't have a microphone, so you take the headphones and you plug it into the mic jack. And then to see it evolve to where I could sample sounds and didn't have to worry about records, and then evolve to where, today we're here talking about the ROLI block, right? That's my whole system in the palm of my hand. So that's evolution. I think the evolution of technology has caused the evolution of music. And what I mean by saying that is that just trying to have access to a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, it was such a tedious task to dig through so many records or dig through so many sounds and to find it. And now you can have all that right in the palm of your hands, right inside your computer. So technology has helped me to express my music more greater than I probably ever could imagine. I'm gonna quote a friend of mine's. He said this to me. He's a guitarist named John Frusciante, who you know, his career is writing music on the guitar, and then he started making music with electronic music. And we was making music one day. He said, "It's incredible that nowadays one single man can make his own symphony." Think about in the old days, no matter what Mozart did, he had to get somebody to hit the flute, somebody to hit the horns. He had to get a whole 80-piece potentially to really express his music. And nowadays, one man can sit there and put all that thought and create his own symphony.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, for us was a big part of the goal in creating these new products and making them more accessible, more expressive, able to do more things. And I totally agree with you about the role of technology and the importance of it in music making. I always loved the book by Marshall McLuhan about how the medium is the message. You know, it's all about the media. And I often think, like, actually genre comes from instrumentation. Like, if you get a bunch of, if you get a guy playing double bass and piano and sax and drums, no matter what they do, it's gonna sound like jazz. You know what I mean? And similarly, you know, with rap and with hip hop, the use of spoken word and the use of the human voice as a kind of like almost found sound, and not saying it doesn't all have to be singing, it doesn't all have to be like regular sort of approach to melodics. It's a big part of what makes that sound. But there's a lot of stuff that you did in your production to you know, push forward the particular sounds, you know, using those technologies and pushing sampling and pushing drum machines. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about kind of some of the particular, you know, ideas that you came up with or worked with in creating sounds or creating tracks.
Well, what I did was I realized that life itself has its beautiful days and its ugly days. Growing up in the projects, you know, it could be a nice sunny day that ends up with somebody being shot. The sounds of police sirens, the noise of your neighbor, those things inspired my music as well. So, you know, I have an album I call Into the 36 Chambers by the Wu-Tang Clan, where we use sounds of people just banging, knocking on your door, to sounds of Asian violins, to just sounds of gunshots. But all those things form a landscape and a musical texture that takes the listener to a place. The beauty about music is that it should be able to take you somewhere. Before we had such a easy access to visuals, you know what I mean? It was, you know, I'm making music before DVDs. So my goal has always been to make something that when you listen to it, you will actually see a movie in your head. And I think music does that. When you listen to the Chinese instrument, the erhu, and you hear that string, the player bowing that one string and making it immediately takes you away from where you're at to where that guy is at. You know what I mean? So that was my goal, was to be able to take my experience and my environment and infuse it into my music, and to hopefully transport my listener to where we're at.
And when you think about that, like, process of transportation and, you know, using those sounds that you were hearing that were, you know, in the context of your life, you know, do you think about that as like an act of expression? Is it an act of resistance, or both?
It's both. It has to be both. The pendulum swings both ways. And more importantly, though, in a simple technology way, or if I had one word to say, I would say it's putting that grit into it. You know what I mean? Think about Bob Marley. He has a song called 400 Years, which is not one of his popular songs, but the recording was so lo-fi. The musicians wasn't as big. The Wailers wasn't down yet. You know what I mean? And the grit of the song alone, with his voice and his rhythm, it just makes you feel something there. You feel something. You smell it almost. That's what I mean. When music could actually get beyond your hearing sense, it can hit your visual sense, your smelling sense, and maybe even your taste. You know, that's you got it popping. I might make a nice song while I'm cooking some. cook a nice one of my vegetarian meals and make the beat and see if you could listen to it and go, smell like RZA got some good lentil beans going on over here or something.
So when you think about that grit and that is that like I want to go into that a little bit deeper, like the philosophy of the grit or the meaning of the grit, or like, you know, is it about lived experience? Is it about kind of like, is it about an artistic expression that's, you know, taking the world and reflecting it? Or what's the opposite of the grit? For example, like if you think of something that's like super slick and like what we would call like super produced, you know, like is it fake? Is it an unreal reflection of the world? Like what's your thinking on that?
I want to say that it's unreal. I mean, some people got a Maybach, some people got a C-Class. Some people don't got no Benz at all. They're just on the bus looking at the Benzes go by. But all of them have an expression. So I would say that when I say grit, you know, since technology has become so hi-fi and we got sounds that's at 44.1 or even 48, we up to 196 speed of playback and all these different things. So what the grit is just the normal life put into the music. So if the thing that a computer does, right, it has it already set at the most clearest possibility that we could actually hear. And to me, you're missing a spoonful of that dirt, a spoonful of that chocolate, you know what I mean? And so when I make my music, I intentionally put in that frequency. You know, analog had its advantages. You listen to old Motown or Al Green, Led Zeppelin, you know, even the old Elton John albums. The analog sound of these records, when you play them compared to the digital, it has a certain frequency that no matter what you do, you won't get, you know, unless you go through a lot of these emulations. So the grit adds that to it. And I did a sound pack for ROLI where I've used grit into creating this sound pack, and I hope that if a person adds one of my snares to their production or add one of my piano sounds or chord sounds, they'll have a little hum, a little grit that makes it a little bit more raspy and a little bit more, you know, rugged.
No, for sure. And I mean, I love the sound pack and have been using it, and like it definitely, if you add in a couple of those sounds, and suddenly it gives it this sense of depth and gives it like more character. Basically, it feels more real. It feels like it's wider or bigger. It's not, you know, it's not just like super clean. But just to kind of riff on that concept a little bit more, you also have been doing, you know, film work as a director, and I'm curious, is there a way that concept like translates into film, for example, like, you know, the way that you think about, you know, the filmmaking and the cutting and the way that you design the scenes, like how does that apply?
Well, definitely. I mean, I've been taught by one of the most grittiest directors of all, to me, Quentin Tarantino. You know, he's able to, in the midst of the most clearest possible lit scene, he's able to give you some kind of, whether it's the action or the dialogue, that's so gritty that it just melds together and make you realize you experience something totally unique. So I did a film called The Man with the Iron Fist. And when I did the film, I was conscious to make certain scenes like be totally like shocking. And I did it with a guy named Eli Roth. Now, Eli Roth is known as the king of horror, right? But the most bloody scenes in the film, which people think that Eli wrote, I wrote them. You know what I mean? Because I put the grit, because I was like, yo, E, don't worry, they're not going to expect this to happen. They're going to think that I'm going to try to make it a little more spiritual. No, I'm going to have that guy get his whole stomach cut open and fall to the floor, and then he going to, so, you know, I think grit and ruggedness has to be infused into film as well. I mean, some of our big films that we love or that's real popular sometimes doesn't translate to the young because it lacks that grit. You know what I mean? Because it didn't have that shocking appeal that drew you right in. And nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with being very technical. Some of our greatest films, you know, are super technical, you know. But even those films, you look at something like Avatar, which is a beautiful film, masterpiece of a film. He still found the way through the action sequences and through his villain to give you that human pull, that human contradiction of what you're seeing, and to engage you. So, it has to be applied.
So, obviously, you know, early days like kung fu films and like that kind of motif was something that was inspiring for you, you know, both just as an art form and from a kind of sonic perspective. But over the years, you know, you've continued to kind of engage with those ideas and philosophies, and you've written books, you know, dealing with these kinds of topics as well. So how has your thinking on that changed or evolved over the years?
Well, it has evolved. When you have, martial arts can be considered a well. You know what I mean? And it's almost endless. So you always can dip in and pull something out of it. Zen is a well, meaning you can immediately become enlightened, right, from a sound, a feeling, an expression, and you can immediately become unenlightened. But your evolution, and to me, the biggest goal of man is evolution. I'll say that to myself, to you. The strongest purpose in any man's life is the evolution of himself. And this evolution will eventually evolve his family, and that evolution could eventually bring evolution to his community, to his country, to his world. An example of that, we could just go back and if we look at all the major religions, and let's talk about Buddhism. Buddha started off as a man who left his wife and kid. After the child was born, he said, hey, I got something I got to do. He don't come back until 20-some years later. And yet, they become his greatest students. And when he leaves the earth, he only have 500 people that's like, hey, Buddha's cool. I like what Buddha was talking about. And yet, after a period of time of, you know, they say 3,500 years, maybe 25 to 3,500 years, we have a billion people talking about his philosophy. If you look at the great Jesus, according to his story, when he left, it was 12 disciples. But now we have a billion. When Prophet Muhammad left Mecca to go to Medina, with just 70. Now we got billions. So that evolution of that man, the evolution of his family, the evolution of his idea caused an evolution of the world. So for me, dealing with my own life and my music, first I saw a kung fu movie as a guy punching a guy in the face, breaking his arm. You know, that was cool. But it evolved to me. It evolved to a place where I learned chivalry. I learned, some of the daintiness of women. I liked the daintiness of the women that was in the films. I learned philosophy. I found myself going down to Chinatown buying books on philosophy. And all those things that I've learned, which led to me to be a vegetarian, that my son, he comes out, he never had a piece of meat in his life. I grew up in the street, so I have criminal activities in my past. He has no criminal activities in his past, you know what I mean? He's evolved. My evolution led to his evolution. Now he could skip my 10 years of hell and move further.
It's amazing to hear that and to think about, basically, I just want to tie one more thing together. Maybe we can also have some questions, but what do you see as the role of music in that? Like, what's the purpose of music? What is the point of music? What's the meaning of music? When you think about, what you've just said about the opportunity we all have to evolve ourselves and then to have an impact on others through that evolution, like where, for you, does music fit in that equation?
Well, music records it for you. It stamps it. You go back and listen to whether it's Mozart or Beethoven in his symphony, it's a captured moment of ideas, a sequence that can now be repeated and can now evoke that emotion to another person. Marvin Gaye had a song called What's Going On? And yet some of his lyrics are still inspirational. They still are relevant to what's going on now. So music is kind of like, to me, a time capsule. It captures the moment. So does film. It captures the moment. I had a big crush on Lucille Ball. And by the time I met her, she was probably 60, right? Because I'm a little kid watching her on TV. So music and film captures those moments and allows the other viewer or listener to evolve. You did something very evolutionary for music yourself, Roland. You went and took the concept of a piano, the concept of a string instrument, percussion and melodic, and you formed the C-board. And now the C-board, for producers and studios, we're able to have a more touch expressiveness of our piano playing. That's evolution. Now, as that instrument circulates more and more people are writing and producing on it, it's going to evolve their expression, and it'll be a capture of time. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, and for me, like the whole point is to kind of evolve the story. It's evolve the story of how we can make music and who can make music, but to try to like really capture the depth of music, because I love a lot of electronic gear, but some of it, like the limits go a bit too far in terms of what you can express or how you can express, or it's just too complicated or it's too expensive, to get to that sound that you want to find. I think the challenge is making tools that are really intelligent but have imperfections in them. Like with a C-board, for example, you can play it in a way where you're a little bit out of tune. Like you play a melody and it's not perfectly tuned, but that's also when you play a bass sound or whatever, what makes it real is that it has that imperfection. And a lot of MIDI instruments just don't have that imperfection. And it's interesting because I think what you're talking about with grit, it reminds me of this concept of that I learned when I studied in Japan of wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is like imperfection, basically, and it's celebrating like the imperfections in things. And that concept of wabi-sabi, or like what we've done with the C-board to allow you to get to those imperfections, and what you've done in your artistic work and film, with grit, and now, with the sound pack and everything, I think there's a really interesting thread there.
And I agree with you. The one thing we used to do is after we would record a track with MIDI, we would go on top of it again with our, just hitting every snare with my finger, playing on top of it, knowing that it's going to miss once in a while. But that miss, here goes something funny. Hip hop itself, right? It can have his seed beginning roots as a step of imperfection. According to the story, the dude is in his house, he's making music with his turntable. They say his mom's come in, he stops the music, she says what she says, and worker, you know what I mean? Then that becomes scratching. Most of the samples, I would sample songs from James Brown or from other great artists, and I got a chance to talk to some of them. And I showed them, I said, I sampled this part of your song. And they was like, that was the mistake. That's when somebody in the band dropped out by mistake. I said, well, that was the part, that's hip hop. So you never know where, so imperfection is important. And that human chance of error, which is not error, it's just random. That human chance of being random is magical. And when you add that to your music, I think that's perfect. Imperfection, perfect. Exactly.
So we'd love to, open up if there's a couple of questions out there. But Sophie, is there a microphone, that we could? Do you want to? Someone has a wireless mic. Okay.
If you got any questions, open for any questions. It could be about the weather, anything.
All right. So we're gonna bring out a mic in 1 sec.
Give me 1 second.
But yeah, no, I think just responding to what you were saying while the mic's coming, challenge for us is sometimes we want to make music much easier for people to make. You know, we want to make it more accessible, but then we don't want to make it like too boxed in, too robotic or too kind of like too perfect, basically, because then that takes the magic out of it. It takes the expression. So yeah, I think we have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. So you pretty much like pioneered the sound of imperfection with hip hop. We could all agree. As far as like technology comes about and all these new like equipment and whatnot, do you feel that that's taken away from the creativity of young producers that are almost trying to mimic the older sounds because they're given a platform that can almost make their sounds perfect?
No, I think that the tools they have now gives them a better chance of first self-fulfillment, which is important, right?
Yeah.
If you, for instance, the block, you know, if you could get on there and within 10 minutes you could create something that's like, wow, look what I did.
Yeah.
That's the first step to get you engaged. Eventually, something's going to happen. It's going to be a mistake. It's going to be on purpose, but something's going to happen that's going to give you a twist. The same way that DJ mother came in the room and all of a sudden something different happened. And when that thing different happened, he was able to build from there. So I think that, there's a school in Amsterdam where they teach all these kids how to produce, and they only use Logic and a laptop. So they have no instruments, but yet they're creating very expressive music. But the person who had the most expressive music actually was the young lady in there who had she put her loops off beat.
Yeah.
Even though, Logic, you can lock it in, she unlocked it. And by unlocking it, she had a different syncopation that had a different groove. And then she sung on top of it with her voice being locked. You know what I mean? And it sounded great. So I think there's a chance. Cool. I think it's still healthy.
And Tikal is one of my favorite albums of all time, so thanks for producing that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? We're here.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about how you would sample different things, you'd sample sounds and things like that. Out of all the amazing songs that you've created, what sample have you used that you think is the most beautiful or the most impactful, and how did you even come across that sample?
Well, that's a big question there. I don't have the direct answer, but I'm gonna tell you, there's a song called Rainy Days. And the string moment of that, the strings in that song invokes such beautiful harmony. But then Ghostface and Raekwon are talking about, on rainy days, I'm trying to think about how to get paid. If you don't believe me, ask my bitch. and the lyrics is taking me to a total, it's like how the lotus is a symbol of Buddhism, but yet it grows in the mud. How could something so beautiful grow out of mud? And that's how that sample of Rainy Days reminds me of. So thanks for that question.
That's a great question. Do we have, I think, time for one more question? We're back here.
What's up? How you doing? All right. I just had a simple question from your, like the Cuban Links album. Just real simple. Who made the verbal intercourse beat?
I did.
Nice. I'm from Hempstead, by the way.
Oh, okay, respect. Long Island.
Yeah. All right.
Respect.
So, I think we're going to wrap up, just, so you guys have a chance to follow up. RZA's sound pack, it's called Spoonful of Grit. It's really nice. It's on, if you have the Noise app, which you can download for free from the App Store, you can check it out. Then we're going to have a little block party here with RZA and also Parisi, and they'll be here soon. It'll probably be a few minutes as we're going to set up, but stick around, because that's going to be cool. And just join me, give a big hand for RZA. Great to have you here and hear from you today.
Thank you all.